URC round number 4 is in the bag. It's the end of the away run for the South African teams. In recent news out that they will be able to play some games in South Africa, which is fantastic news as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, we'll go through the games pretty quickly. I saw the first two. I saw Munster, Connacht from the second half, and I saw Cardiff and the Sharks. The rest of them I've gone through the highlights. All of them I looked at the stats, the standings, the future fixtures. So yeah, we'll go through and you guys can let me know. There'll be timestamps for the specific games as well as always. But yeah, the first one, the Dragons and the Stormers. As good as it feels to wear a Stormers jersey again for the first time in what seems like forever as the Stormers get their first win, I was a bit disappointed with Dragons, man. Dragons, good away win last week, a 1-point loss to Leinster. And when you look at that scoreline, that kind of puts into context how decent a 1-point loss, albeit with a different Leinster squad, is. But yeah, they went down at home. Good for the Stormers, as I mentioned, though. First win for them, 24 points to 10. Is actually pretty comfortable. The final try at the end, ZAS gets both of them, and both kind of coming late, 64 and 79 minutes. The last one's a bit of a brutal one for the Dragons guys, a bit of a howler, but you got to chase that ball. And for Dragons, just the one try to Lewis, who's the same guy who has the howler. But yeah, a bit of a kicking contest early, I thought. The Dragons guys missed touch pretty badly at one point, which was a bit of a let-off. Stormers had the first points. Murat had a yellow card for a high tackle. It's one of those ones that people don't like to see yellow carded, but that stuff kind of gets yellow carded these days. So yeah, you might think that the Stormers were kind of hard done by the ref, but the penalty count actually ends up 12-4. So it's a remarkably low penalty count with the Dragons guys copping triple the penalties of the Stormers. So it kind of evens out in terms of one side getting a yellow card but conceding fewer penalties. The Dragons, though, did get the first try. That was during the yellow card. It was a grubber through for Lewis to make it 7-3. They were in front. Plus, they kicked the penalties. They got all of their 10 points when the Stormers guys had a man in the bin. Elliot D had to go off for a while, which was, he was kind of down for a long time, which was a bit concerning. But yeah, halftime, it was 10 points to 9. The Stormers had the momentum for kind of the last 10 minutes of the half. 48 minutes, there were some proper handbags. There was a bit of feeling in the game, and not for the first time. To be fair, there have been handbags at least one or two times before that. Moriarty had his nose messed up. It was at least dislocated or broken or something. I don't know. Yeah, a bit messy, but the Dragons' defence was holding until it wasn't, because Zas got the try. I wrote that it has to come, and Galant's the man who puts in the grubber. He's having a cracking season so far, albeit without the results. And to be fair, the Dragons guys were on a yellow card warning anyway, so it was kind of one that's actually maybe better to concede the try, because otherwise you might be getting a yellow card and a try. But yeah, so it was I guess slightly disappointing though, because the Dragons guys did have one chance to turn the ball over when Bertrand got his hands on it, when there was no Stormers guys at the breakdown, and Bertrand just knocked it on. So the Stormers guys got knock-on advantage. But yeah, apart from that, the try really was coming. If he'd got that turnover, they may have escaped, but the pressure was still building. Zas get one at the death, like I mentioned. They basically just kicked the ball, booted it down. Zas chased it. Lewis was chasing it. Couldn't gather it. Zas did. And yeah, hell of a try. 24 points to 10, man. So good win. Good win. You look at the stats, possession 54-46 and 52-48 the territory in the Stormers' favour, especially though the second half. It was a lot more lopsided. As I mentioned, the penalty count was 12-4. You look at some of the guys, Rus, Galant, Zas, key performers, man. Rus had 5 defenders beaten, Galant had 6, and that try assist. Zas gets his 2 tries. Cardiff for Dragons has 19 of 19 tackles, which is a pretty good shift, but still, at home against the team which hadn't had a win, that's a bit of a disappointing one for the Dragons guys. But the Stormers go into the bye knowing that they've got a win on the board. So they are actually the top South African team at the moment in 9th. A win, 2 losses, and a draw. Which is, if you think about it, 4 away games and you've got only a 50% losing record is actually not too bad. Dragons are 1-3, so 1 win, 3 losses, and they are in 10th. They are away to Cardiff in their next game. So it's a kind of a Welsh derby, whereas the Stormers, they'll be on the bye. The next game, Ulster and the Lions. Yes, This one I did watch. I did know the result though before I watched this one. I watched it kind of delayed, so it took a little bit of the sting out of it. When you know the result, it's kind of you lose a little bit of that drama. But it seemed to be all Ulster early, and they did get a try through Timony on 4 minutes. I'm gonna have to start calling him T Money or something because he's worth every euro that he gets paid. He is such a key performer for Ulster. The other try they got was Hume on 35, but the Lions had actually gone in front through Pienaar on 17. So they got the second try of the game. Theirs was converted, so they were actually in the lead for a while. Viljoen, you guys tell me, has actually not really played any pro rugby at 10 before, which is remarkable because he seems to be doing pretty well. Viljoen. I mean, I've seen him, as I mentioned, I think as a fullback and as a midfielder, but he just seems very composed. So credit to him, man, in a pinch, stepping into play in that pressure position. Ulster did manage to get that try through Hume when they got it wide. Trucking it up through the middle wasn't getting a heck of a lot of pay in the first half anyway. So half-time was 12-10. It was still all to play for. Addison seemed to have a pretty bad leg injury early on in the second half, which is pretty brutal news. He seems to be one of those guys that always gets injured. I haven't seen the update on what the injury is, but someone will let us know. Ulster, though, did power over in the second half, close range, 9-point lead. 9-point lead was looking pretty comfortable, to be honest. I mean, I knew the result, so maybe that's my brain telling me, the Lions are going to lose this. But the Lions weren't looking like kind of getting 2 scores at that time, especially if they knock it on from a quick tap. It's just brutal, going from kind of bad to worse. They did get another try through Timony on 67, but it's 4 tries to the Lions, 26-10. It's pretty comfortable without being like a 50 points to 15, but man, it's still a pretty good win for Ulster. They are, believe it or not, first on the log, 4-0. They're looking very, very comfortable. I mean, the key guys, Timony, like I mentioned, everywhere, 15 runs, 59 run meters. He's the number one guy. Chituka, that's Vincent, had 28 out of 30 tackles, which is a Herculean effort in itself, but on a losing one. I mean, Ulster got more run meters, 418 to 293. Penalty count's pretty even, 7-8. The Lions copping one more. But I mean, the tackle count tells a story. 123 for Ulster, 206 for the Lions, so having to do a lot of defending. The knock-on count being 8-12, with the Ulster having 8, the Lions having 12 is a wee bit high, but yeah, it's still a pretty comfortable win. The Lions are in 12th, they are 1-3 onto the bye, so at least they get to go back home, as I mentioned, and as I mentioned, Ulster first away to Connacht, so happy days for the guys from Belfast. So far, so good. The next game I didn't watch. As I mentioned, I watched the highlights. Zebre and Glasgow. The highlights for this game is the most bizarre. They trimmed it down to 4 minutes, which is hard to really tell anything. The stats maybe tell a better story, but from what I could gather, it was Glasgow getting some line breaks and whatnot early. They seemed to be chucking the ball around a lot in the first half, and they did get a try through the forwards, though, through Bean on 5 minutes. And they got a second one through Tupolotu on 29. But Zebre had scored a penalty before they got their second try. It took them about 20 minutes, but it was about 7-3 after 20 minutes. The try for Tupolotu is highlight worthy. It was some crazy back and forth slick hands. As the commentators mentioned, the Zebre defense just didn't have a chance to set, because every time you thought you had a point of contact to tackle, the ball was just going left or right. It was going both directions. It was very, very slick stuff. Based on that, I thought the scoreline would have been a lot more. But, the second half highlights was literally a Weir penalty and a Zebre line break, and that was it. So I got virtually no idea what happened. But 17 points to 6 is comfortable without being emphatic, for sure. As I mentioned, the stats is where I maybe get more information actually than watching the bloody highlights. Like, possession and territory is first half 61-39 to Glasgow, and second half 63-37 territory. But second half is more even, 56-44 to Zebre and 58-42 to Zebre. So from the looks of that, Glasgow were kind of running riot without being able to score a heck of a lot of tries in the first half. And maybe Zebre kind of tightened it up in the second. Both sides seemed to have a few line-out misses. Penalty count was even, 13-15. It's a wee bit high, but not terrible. The Zebre fullback had 92 run meters and 5 defenders beaten. That's Laloifi. Pretty good shift. The Glasgow back row each had a lot of carries, which is pleasing to see. McLean had 5 defenders beaten 88 run meters, so there seemed to be a bit going on. Not that you'd know it from watching the highlights. But there you go, small crowd. And the commentator mentioned at the end, not exactly a classic. So take that for what it is. But still, Glasgow, man. 4th, they are the top of the teams who've had a loss. All the teams above them are undefeated, so they're doing all right. They're getting the results. They will be tested, though, because they are hosting Leinster next week, one of the aforementioned unbeaten teams. And Zebre are at home to Edinburgh. They are last. They are winless, none from 4. The only team, now that the Stormers have picked up a win, to yet get a win. The next game, Benetton and Ospreys. I think I probably missed the trick by not watching this game. This game seems to have been bonkers crazy. Multiple tries on each side. So each team walks away with a 4-try bonus point. But yeah, it seems to have just been absolutely back and forth, crazy stuff. Lucchese loves a try, doesn't he? God, that guy's becoming my new favourite Italian player. He gets the first one. It was a weird one as well with the highlights because they showed his try and then they didn't show any highlights until the 32nd minute, which was Osprey's first try. That one was, I think, was that the one before? That was out on the left wing, right? Yeah, and from what the commentator said, it was kind of against the run of play. So, yeah, but it was kind of a quick-fire double because Reece Webb, bit of magic. He seemed to have a good game from what I could gather from the highlights. Ospreys go in front with 2 tries. Roots got the second one. Kind of a quick-fire double, 33 and 37 minutes, 12-7 at half-time. But I was wondering, why are there so few highlights in the first half? Because they're all in the second half. The second half's got some pretty sweet ones. I mean, the one through Webb, his first try was kind of a classic. Back of the scrum, draw your man, pass the ball after a line break, right? You'll just match up with the defenders and you got the extra man. So they had a good lead, 19 points to 7. I didn't actually know the scoreline in this one. When I watched it, I think I knew Ospreys had won, but I didn't know the scoreline. And then on 47 minutes, when they get Webb's second try, I wrote that's surely game over. 28 points to 7. Or 28 points to 7? 26 points to 7. Yes, that's right. 26 points to 7. But then, man, Benetton, and again, highlight-worthy tries. If you haven't seen the highlights of this one, it's well worth a watch. Reno Smith, I wrote, this is why the second half's got so many highlights. He has a chip and regather, which is a proper thing of beauty. And then he sets up Ioane with the next one with an offload. Ioane steps the Ospreys defender, and Ospreys guys are literally just falling over because they've just been bamboozled. Couldn't do a thing about it. Literally falling over. It was crazy. And then the comeback was complete with the try to MUNvCON on 66. So it was 26 points apiece. Ospreys had a yellow card. But man, Myler with the penalty, that's the only difference. It's a 3-point victory. Like, what a crazy game that seemed. I wish I had watched that one in full. Seemed to be an absolutely bonkers one. Interestingly, Benetton have got the possession. Ospreys have got the territory. Ospreys' lineout seems to struggle, 13 from 18. Benetton's lineout is flawless, 13 from 13. Benetton seemed to struggle with the turnovers, conceded 17 to Ospreys 7. So kind of contrasting styles. Maybe run meters is 595 to 371. Ioane has 138 run meters. 8 defenders beaten. Matthew Morgan has... It is Matthew, isn't it? Or is it? There's two Morgans. Morgan has 97 run meters. 3 defenders beaten. Oh, that's crazy. Low penalty count and low tackle completion percentage seems to make for a pretty fun game. What can I say? Benetton are 2-2, so they're in 8th, kind of mid-table. They're away to Scarlets next week. Ospreys are 3-1, actually looking pretty good. They're in 5th, the top of the Welsh teams, but they are at home to Munster next week, who are undefeated. So that will certainly be a good test of where the Ospreys are at. Edinburgh and the Bulls. This game was a wee bit marred by controversy at the end. Again, I've seen the highlights. They start well, Edinburgh. They like scoring tries fast. Immelman gets the first one on 8 minutes. That's a grubber through for him. It's class. And the Bulls don't get on the scoreboard until about 20, so it's 5-3. Edinburgh keep the scoreboard ticking over 3 times. It's 8-3, 11-3, and then 14-3, and that's the way it is at half-time. So it seems to be a bit of an arm wrestle from what I could gather. Edinburgh had a big old line break in the second half, but then they decided suddenly they're going to play football instead of rugby. They put it to the boot or the foot. Put that together, that's your foot. And instead of the hands, and it just seemed to be a wasted opportunity, which was pretty frustrating. The Bulls got one through Marcel Coetzee on 70 minutes from close range. And he didn't have a heck of a lot of like run meters and stuff. He's such a good ball carrier. So they might have kept him quiet, but he still got on the board. 14 points to 10. And then towards the end of the game, Tambwe gets a try chalked off for a double movement. It looks like a try in real time, and it looks like a double movement in slow motion is the best way I can describe it. And Jake White mentioned in the post-match press conference that it's partly to do with the artificial pitch, and I probably agree with him. I think if it's grass, Tambwe probably slides over. But he kind of holds up a bit on the artificial pitch and pushes himself up a little bit, which I think is enough to go double movement if you're looking at it in slow-mo. In real time, it just looks like he reaches out. So, tough call, but I mean, slow motion, it looks like the right call for mine. But it's one of those ones that if you're a Bulls fan, you'd be like, we're robbed. And if you're an Edinburgh fan, you'd be like, definitely a double movement. So, pretty much a classic 50-50 for mine. But, it seems like a pretty high penalty count, 14-17, Edinburgh 14. The set piece numbers didn't seem great for both sides. Gilchrist, though, had 16 from 16 tackles. Botha had 16 from 17. Bradbury and Tambwe were your top run meter guys. So, interestingly, it was a Lucy for the Edinburgh guys, and it was an outside back for the Bulls. 67 run meters each, kind of first equal. So, close game. Losing bonus point for the Bulls, but they are still in 15th with only 1 win from their 4 games, but it has been 4 away games. So, as always, I'm not reading too much into it. Edinburgh, they are 2 wins, a loss, and a draw. They are away to Zebre next week in 6th, while the Bulls go on the bye. So they get a chance to kind of rest, recuperate, and reorganise. I'm sure we will see them kind of bounce back. Speaking of bouncing back, Scarlets. Where am I? Scarlets got a big old hiding. 50 points to 15. Goodness gracious me. I looked at Leinster's lineup when it was named and I was like, it's pretty much Ireland, isn't it? It's pretty much an Ireland team. And boy, did they... they were actually behind, I think, bizarrely, because the first try was to McNichol after a couple of penalties each. McNichol got the first one, which was like a great try. A nice offload in the setup. So it was a bit of a thing of beauty. And it didn't take Leinster long to reply. And it's kind of like one of those ones where you score 1, we'll score 2. They got 1 through a maul, which made it 8 points apiece. And then 5 minutes later, they got the next one through Porter again. It was close range. Gibson Parker got close. Porter goes over. So, To make matters worse, right before halftime, they got a penalty try, a big scrum kind of 5 meters out. It was well in the red in terms of the clock. It was well into injury time or overtime or whatever you want to call it. But so 22 points to 8 at halftime. That's pretty brutal when you're away to Leinster. The forwards were showing some sick skills, like playing like backs. It was like Kelleher's line break. I think it was set up by Doris's offload. I think that was the one that had the kind of dodgy-ish James Lowe not knock on, but it didn't make a difference, did it? But the skills were phenomenal. Scarlets, I wrote a note like surely they're dead and buried, because I actually legitimately didn't know the result to this one before I watched the highlights. Lozana got one, and I thought, okay, maybe this is going to breathe life. No, this is not going to breathe life into their effort, because Healy gets one, and then Scarlets get another yellow card, I think. And, they get 2 to Sheehan. One of them's a bloody cross kick. When you're cross kicking it to your replacement hooker, that's when you know things are getting pretty bad. So, 50 points to 15, man. Leinster are just something else. The stats are not pretty reading if you're a Scarlets fan, but for Leinster, it's just so dominant. Possession 62-38. Territory 64-36. Clean breaks 11-2. Defenders beaten 26-8. Offloads even 17-3. Scarlets have to make 161 tackles to Leinster's 95. Lozana makes 22 out of 25, so good effort for him. But Jordan Lama, 70 run meters, 3 clean breaks. I think he almost scored at the end again, didn't he? Could have made it even more, but man, what an emphatic win that was. Yeah, pretty tough stuff for the Scarlets, but Leinster doing what they do. 4-0 they are. They're in second. Away to Glasgow next week. Like I mentioned, Glasgow are on a pretty good run, so that should be a good game. Scarlets are home to Benetton. They are 1-3 in 13th, so it'll be a good time for them to pick up a result sometime soon. Speaking of also controversies as well, the Munster and Connacht game, I got up late and I watched from the second half. I managed to catch the replay of the first half action, which was a couple of penalties to Connacht, a yellow card to Sammy Arnold for a high tackle. And then during the yellow card period, Munster got their first try through Clutter, but it was a bit controversial. Like, it was some amazing skill from Ty Byrne to do the whole footwork, kick the ball thing without having picked it up first from a cross kick. But was he offside? He looked offside, at least from the camera angle we were shown. He looked offside. Maybe the TMO had a better angle of it, which is something I often wonder when stuff... Because, you know, camera angles can be deceptive for us at home, but didn't look great from where we were sitting anyway. But yeah, it was a try before halftime. So halftime is 7 points to 6 months to go in front. They did get held up early in the second half during the yellow card. It was Clutter again, but Connacht's defence managed to hold. And Munster's defence didn't hold when Boyle, from a quick tap, just virtually ran straight over. Munster, whose defence is usually, you know, pretty tough to break, was virtually non-existent for that quick tap one. But yeah, a few back and forth moments. Carberry got a penalty. It was a tight game. And then it was opened up a wee bit when Cardi got his try on 69 with 10 to go. I thought that might have been the game because I was legit watching this one live. And he was pumped to get that try, wasn't he? Seems to have a bit of a point to prove. This is Jack Cardi. But the crowd got into it when it was 18-13 with 10 to play. The crowd was absolutely into it. You could kind of feel them as that extra man on the field. On about 74 minutes, Munster had a 5-metre scrum. They went 12 phases. Connacht were offside. And the next chance, Munster got it done when... Who was it? It was... Barron. On 78. It was only 2 minutes to go. And interestingly, that one all came from a restart, right? It was Munster's restart. Connacht caught it, and immediately was a maul turnover for Munster. That's kind of where the winning of the game came from, I think. Connacht it was a big conversion from Carberry. He nailed it, so it was 20 points to 18. Cardi's restart, when Connacht had to do the same thing, was a phenomenal restart. It was a hanging ball just over the 10 metres, but Wycherley, man, he gathered it. No problem. So, yeah, big play. I mean, you look at the stats, though. It's a bit of a weird one. Possession, 65-35. Territory, 59-41. So Munster seems to have a lot of ball, but clean breaks, 4-3. So that's pretty even. You'd think it was kind of similar. Defenders beaten 16-15 in favour of Connacht. You look at the run metres per carry. So how effective are these guys with their carries? Connacht are at 4.1 metres per carry. Munster's at 3. So... yeah, the attack wasn't seemingly, I mean, apart from the bit of magic for the controversial try and then the brutality at the end to burst over, didn't seem to kind of snap. Like, whereas, was it last week where they were just against Scarlets, right? When they were just setting the world alight? Maybe it's just different opposition. I don't know. But yeah, it wasn't as fluid, that's for sure. Penalty count 9 to Munster, 14 to Connacht. Clutter has 11 from 11 tackles. That one try, almost another. Connor Oliver has 19 from 22 tackles, so good shit from him. But like I mentioned, Cardi seemed to be pretty much on fire despite the fact that he was in a losing effort. But as I said, credit to Carberry for kicking that final kick to put them in front with about a minute to go. The last game, Cardiff and the Sharks. I did watch this one, fortunately. Interesting game. In the second half, I mean, the Sharks' management of the game will be questioned for sure. Cardiff's defence, you got to give a lot of credit, but man, the Sharks had some chances. Unbelievable. Bit of high ball early from both sides, I thought. It is Matthew Morgan. There's two Morgans. Matthew Morgan's the one that plays for Cardiff. Who's the other? Is it Luke that plays for Ospreys? Get my Morgans confused. Yeah, Cardiff got the first one. Matthew Morgan, he lit the game up with a bit of footwork when he was seemingly well covered. The Sharks guys were just a bit passive on him, and he burst through for a really good try on 10 minutes. Pina had a really easy chance to kick a penalty, but he missed that one. So the Sharks were still on 0 after about 20 minutes. And then Holo, bit of magic try from a line-up move as well. He's got such amazing footwork. A lot just like Matthew Morgan, I guess. Deadly, man. 17-0. 17-0, they're looking pretty comfortable, to be fair, in that first half. The Sharks, though, they weren't letting the game get in the way because Thomas the Toy powered over from close range. So at least it was 17-10 at halftime. 17-10 is still kind of very much game on. I wrote, man, the Cardiff defence holds in the second half under pressure from the Sharks for about 15 minutes. Literally. I don't know that the Cardiff guys were in the Sharks half for at least 15 minutes. The Sharks eventually, because they were getting penalties and whatnot, they eventually shifted to opt for a 3-point after going for scrums and going for lineouts, and they missed the penalty. I think that one was Bosch. But Pina, Chamberlain, and Bosch all had shots at goal for this game. But they missed that one. Priestland got one on 67 to make it 20 points to 10. But that seemed to kind of spur the Sharks guys on. When they did get some wide ball out to Pocket, they got it on 71 minutes. So they finally cracked the Cardiff defence to make it 20 points to 17. So that's kind of game on. But that late Cardiff penalty made it 23-17, which just seemed like, can we see the Sharks get another try? Maybe, but they had struggled for such long periods of this game to crack the Cardiff defence, so it didn't seem all that likely. And sure enough, Cardiff were able to run the clock down at the end. It might have looked a bit dodgy at the end because Priestland wasted a bit of time and then kicked it out, and the TV clock still had like 5 seconds on it, but the TV clock's not the official clock. Not the official clock. The TV clock is just indicative of where the time is at. They have their own timekeepers. So it's not the official clock. So the time was up, even if it looked not to be up on the TV. So yeah, pretty well played by the Cardiff guys. Possession finishes 54-46 in favour of the Sharks. Territory 60-40. The second half, it's Sharks possession 61, territory 68. They should have scored more points, man. Goal kicking is 85% to 50%, so the Sharks missed their chances. Turnovers conceded 14 by the Sharks, 9 by Cardiff. Cardiff's tackle percent is at 90, so you've got to give credit to their defence, man. Sharks were 85, which is not bad. Lane didn't hardly get any of the ball, which was a bit disappointing, seeing he's in the midfield, but I mean, Holo, 6 defenders beaten from him. Pretty good shift, so yeah. Penalties conceded, Cardiff 13, the Sharks 9. Sharks will look back at that one, be pretty disappointed, I reckon. But as I said, credit to Cardiff's defence and for scoring a couple of pretty sweet tries early in the first. So, yeah, almost at half an hour. Better call that quits. I should say Cardiff are at home to the Dragons. They are in 7th. They are 2-2. And the Sharks are 1-3. They are in 14th. They obviously go on to the bye like the rest of the South African teams for a wee bit. So, yeah, interesting round. Stormers get a win. The other South African teams have a loss. The 2 Italian teams go down. Ospreys get a win. Cardiff gets a win, but then pretty disappointing ones for Dragons and for Scarlets especially. So 50-50 for the Welsh teams. Couple of wins for the Scottish teams. And Connacht, once again, is the only Irish team that fails to pick up a win, although that was kind of going to be tough away to Munster, and 2018 is certainly not a particularly disappointing result, seeing as how tough a place that is to go, and given the circumstances, it easily could have gone the other way. But anyway, I better go. Hope you guys enjoyed the round. Let me know your thoughts on the games, especially the ones I didn't see in full, and the ones I did see in full as well. But yeah, you guys take care, and I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.